Paul Revere, patriot who made a right to warn colonists of British arrival. Lexington and Concord. Beginning of the American Revolution, April 1775. The shot heard around the world. Second Continental Congress. Served as the Governor for 6 years. May 1775. Formed an army with Washington as commander. Olive Branch Petition. Colonists expressed regret for what happened and claimed to be loyal citizens of England. King refused and declared the colonies to be in rebellion. Battle of Bunker Hill. Took place near Boston. British won because the colonists ran out of ammunition. Thomas Paine. Pamphlet. Common Sense argued that all problems were the king's fault. Thomas Jefferson. Father of the Declaration of Independence. Majority of the wording. Declaration of Independence. July 4, 1776. Hessians. German mercenary soldiers. Tories. Englishmen in the colonies representing the king. Whigs. Patriots who favored independence and the new government. Count de Vergennes. French foreign minister that hinted at French aid early on and later initiated 2 important treaties. Pierre Beaumarchais. Set up a fake trading company that secretly provided arms to the U.S. that were paid for by the King of France. Battle of Trenton. Washington defeated a large force of Hessians and moved on to capture Princeton a few days later. Battle of Saratoga. General Horatio Gates planned attack on Johnny Burgoyne as he journeyed south with a huge entourage. Horatio Gates. American officer in command at Battle of Saratoga. Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne. British officer in command at Battle of Saratoga brought women and children along. Treaty of Amity and Commerce. France recognized the U.S. as independent and offered trade. Treaty of Alliance. France officially became a partner with the U.S. in the war. Valley Forge. About 2,500 of Washington's men died in the winter of 1777-78 because of cold, hunger, and disease. Carlisle Commission. Delivered a British plan for conciliation designed to block the French alliance rejected by U.S. Congress. General Lafayette. French general who brought troops to help the colonies win the war. Battle of Yorktown. American victory ended fighting in America. French Navy blocked the harbor at Yorktown so the British could not send ships to rescue their troops. Washington and French troops had British cornered. Benedict Arnold. Thought he should have been given credit at Saratoga. Conspired against colonies to hand over West Point. Plan was discovered but he escaped. Treaty of Paris 1783. Ended American Revolution. Britain recognized U.S. independence. Virginia Statute of Religious Liberty. Written by Thomas Jefferson said that no man was required to support any religion. Primogeniture. Land must be inherited by the oldest son. Entail. All land must be inherited in one piece by one person. Massachusetts Constitution. Oldest written state constitution still in effect. Virginia Bill of Rights. First state to include a Bill of Rights model for other states. George Mason. Main author or Virginia Bill of Rights. Father of the Bill of Rights. Grandfather of U.S. Bill of Rights. Jonathan Trumbull. Artist to first display unique American art. Noah Webster's Blueback Speller. Simplified spellings of British words. Adam Smith. The wealth of nations caused the founding fathers to adopt capitalism. Father of capitalism. Articles of Confederation. The first constitution for the U.S., approved by the Second Continental Congress in November 1777, ratified in November 1781, created a firm league of friendship, emphasis on states' rights. Mount Vernon Conference. Washington had delegates from Maryland and Virginia come to his house to settle argument over trade on the Potomac River. Annapolis Convention. 5 states attended to discuss issues over trade. Congress was asked to call another convention. Philadelphia Convention. 1787. 12 colonies send delegates to revise the Articles of Confederation. Delegates agree the U.S. needs a new constitution. Shays Rebellion. Farmers in western Massachusetts rebelled because of high taxes and bad state government took over courthouses to prevent foreclosure on farms. Constitutional Convention. 1787. Delegates sent to write a new constitution. George Washington as presiding officer. James Madison as principal author. James Madison. Father of the Constitution. Constitutional Convention. 1787 delegates sent to write a new constitution, George Washington as presiding officer, James Madison as principal author. Virginia Plan. National Executive National Court System, 2-house legislature, upper house chosen by lower house chosen by popular election with the number of state representatives based on population. New Jersey Plan. Plural executive Supreme Court, 1 vote for each state. Great Compromise. Settled the issue of representation in Congress bicameral Congress House of Reps based on population, Senate with 2 senators from each state. 3/5 Compromise. Each slave was counted as 2/5 of a person for taxation and representation. Commerce and Slave Trade Compromise. Congress could not stop the importation of slaves for at least 20 years and could not tax exports. U.S. Constitution. Federal type of government powers divided between national and state governments, executive, legislative, and judicial branches, President, Congress, and Supreme Court. Separation of powers, checks and balances implemented when 9 states had ratified. Federalists. Approved the new Constitution and the federal government. Anti-Federalists. Opposed the new Constitution and the federal government. The Federalist Papers. 85 essays published in the newspapers of New York to convince the colonists to ratify the Constitution, written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. Northwest Ordinance 1787. Passed by Articles of Confederation. Congress organized the Northwest Territory, outlawed slavery in the Northwest Territories, set rules for how territories could become states. U.S. Bill of Rights. Added to the Constitution in 1791. Washington's presidency. Pomp and ceremony. Prestigious cabinet. Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of State. Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of the Treasury. Executive Independence, Commander-in-Chief. Whiskey Rebellion. Farmers in western Pennsylvania rebelled because of a tax on whiskey. Washington called the army to put down the rebellion, but farmers gave in. Jay Treaty. 1794 U.S. granted England most favored nation status and received little in return. Pinckney Treaty. 1795 Spain gave the U.S. the right to use the Mississippi River and deposit goods at New Orleans. Farewell Address. 1796. Washington published speech at end of office in Philadelphia newspaper warning against political parties and entangling alliances. Alexander Hamilton. First Secretary of the Treasury. Economic Policy Report on Public Credit. 1790 Report on Manufacturing. 1791. First Bank of the U.S. Controversy over creation led to creation of Federalist and Republican parties. Election of 1796. Federalist John Adams wins president. Republican Thomas Jefferson becomes vice president. XYZ affair. U.S. sent 3 representatives to France to get them to stop plundering American ships. French demanded bribes before even discussing. Alien and Sedition Acts. Limited freedom of speech, press, and liberty of aliens. Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. These states declared Alien and Sedition Acts unconstitutional. Election of 1800. Thomas Jefferson runs again and this time defeats Adams. Aaron Burr runs as the Republican Party's vice presidential candidate. Jefferson and Burr tie the House of Representatives. Decides Federalist era ends. 12th Amendment. Separate ballots to be cast for president and vice president. 1804. Burr-Hamilton duel. Burr runs for governor of NY. Hamilton campaigns against him, causing Burr's loss. Burr challenged Hamilton to a duel and Hamilton was killed. Marbury v. Madison. Supreme Court ruled a law unconstitutional for the first time, established power of judicial review. Jefferson's presidency. Orderly transition from Federalist Party to Republican Party. Less pomp and ceremony. Economy in government. Whiskey tax repealed. Navy cutbacks reduced the Army. Reduced national debt. Louisiana Purchase. 1803 U.S. bought Louisiana from France and doubled size. Lewis and Clark Expedition. 1803 to 1806 explore Louisiana all the way to the Pacific Ocean to strengthen U.S. claims to Oregon. Embargo Act of 1807. England and France were at war and both were interfering with U.S. trade. Jefferson halted all trade with foreign countries. First president to use economic warfare. War of 1812. War between U.S. and Britain. U.S. forces were defeated on land and sea. Capital was burned. Treaty of Ghent. December 1814 ended War of 1812. Status quo. Battle of New Orleans. Jackson defended against British attack after a peace treaty had already been signed. Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner during the War of 1812, not national anthem until 1930s. War of 1812. War between U.S. and Britain. U.S. forces were defeated on land and sea. Capital was burned.